think I'm turning this.
Yeah.
Got it. Yes.
Doctor,
Yes.
maybe on the break or afterwards, you had given us, some information last class pertaining, because I'm gonna be green here, and I actually understand,
Mm-hmm.
you had described or given us, quite a bit of legislation and whatnot, pertaining to poker and all that, right?
Mhm.
And you differentiate between if it applied to commercial banks or it's, offshore banks or
Mhm,
different type of
mhm,
entities,
mhm.
and whatever it was.
Okay.
If it was, corruption or negative, can I get that information at some point?
Yes, you can. Who wrote it down? Because that's all in chapters 1 and 2.
Yeah.
So let's see. Let me find a marker and let me see who's brave to recreate based upon what they read from units 1 and 2.
Morning, morning.
Five.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Marker.
I'm sorry.
Morning.
How you doing?
This one don't have no markers. I need to.
Wolfsburg.
Okay, all right. Because don't confuse her now. You're too far to the back. Sit right here. You sure?
Trust me, I'm talking. It's just that I can't talk because I'm leave today.
No, I don't mean like that. You focus. Yes. Why are you looking puzzled?
No, this is the one you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what she wants. I want to pick 2 people. You should have rewritten your notes. Let's see. Oh, it's in nice and neat. Excellent. So who tried any of the questions? Attempted.
I attempted.
May I read it?
You want to do it for real, for real?
Up to you. You don't want me to see it, it's fine. Let's go have a look at that, buddy, you know. Which one is this?
This is,
Yeah.
this option E. It's a work in progress.
Yeah. When you say question, they would mean.
So questions of talk.
Oh, okay. So you did that one first. Okay, all right. And you use the word count? What I put on the board?
I did, I'm not sure how far back this draft goes, but I know I attempted everything and, I revised after the last class.
I need 2 volunteers. Are you gonna be one? To assist her now. You're not getting today's class yet. I need 2 volunteers to assist her. Who's gonna assist her? Yes? She needs help from the last class, looking at the legislation that falls under each industry and the international documents that she needs to refer to. Who's gonna help her? Who's that?
No, I left my notebook.
Okay. My good friend over here, field staff. The word is not in order. Put it on the board. Because you look like you have a lot of scratches. And believe it or not, if you learn this, that part of it, units 1 and 2, then when you get to 3, it makes it easier. But if you don't know 1 and 2, you're gonna be lost, have a loss. Because whenever you write, you're not gonna have any substance to your writing, because you don't have the knowledge in your head. Okay, so start writing. Why is this so long?
It's a work in progress.
think the first one was the European Commission and Council, right?
Look right. Someone else is gonna come up, and then we'll structure it for her, so don't write here. What's this? You talking about the same thing? 1 and 2 was the paragraph. Probably. From the same question, right? 8. This 8.
Yeah. So, no.
Okay. Let's go back here. We might do this as homework.
I agree.
So where's the impact? Bearing in mind the word count. Impact on conduct and practices. So where is that? Bearing in mind word count. You see what I'm saying? I want you to, when you do the first draft, focus on what they're asking for. In that when you answer it, you may have too much, but it still answers the question.
So what about 6?
That's not an impact. How did it impact what they do? What did they do before? Okay, let's go back to the conversation you had having with her before
Okay.
class began. And she was telling you the impact. What did she say?
Saying that,
Urban
a lot of,
Yeah, you learned this.
Okay, that's an impact. It's an action. So when that legislation was passed, how did it impact conduct? The consequences of it, what changed?
Okay, based upon my research, I'm not sure if this is the most recent draft, but based upon the last thing I did, I recall finding that there were enhanced due diligence measures that had to be implemented because of the Patriot Act.
Okay,
As a result, there was a need to establish compliance.
there you go. That's
Okay.
what they're looking for.
Okay.
Not that.
All right, understand.
Okay. Which is which one? First one? The one for the day? That's good. So then it could be you.
So that was like, okay. I missed that one. But okay.
But you didn't get. No mumbling so we can hear. I want to hear the words very good.
You remember where it was in there?
That was.
What you mean? And remember the word count, right?
Yeah, see, yeah. Thank you. That's it.
You have to.
Yeah, that was the part.
Right.
Okay. FAP, I
Yeah. Yeah. Anybody else? You did not?
No, I didn't. Excuse me, the proceeds. Proceeds of crime. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just giving us some homework to do, right?
I didn't leave anything out, but unfortunately, pick up the wrong one.
No, that was our requirement. I'll think about it.
Okay, all right.
You finished?
Yeah, just gonna finish it. That's all I got.
Okay.
You can understand.
I can understand that. I can understand. Anybody else? No drama. You didn't bring it in. What did you I didn't just tell you don't write that down. No, because we gotta put it in order. So I didn't write down take notes of the word count, I hope you did. Remember we put on the board last week? I remember when we went through the questions, I told you there are certain action words. Right. So when you answer the question based on the action words. Right. So you should have last week at least start to go through the background, the history. So you know what you're writing when you write. After you've done the history now, this week, you're gonna go and do some research based on the action words. Because remember, they don't want you to give them the same examples they gave you. But that means us more research. So in your head now, you have an idea of what the question is asking about. Have your background information, even if you haven't read it yet, you have your background for each one. And now you're gonna go and find examples. You finished already? All right. So last week we went through what you need to know in this role. And remember when I started, I said that there are different sectors in this industry, correct? And they are? Oh Lord. This look like this book is only open on Saturday morning. Come on, let's go. We start by regulators.
Insurance.
Security is? Remember? Yes, I'm gaming. Okay, let's take a part of this off. Where's my gaming person? Okay. So, remember I said that all of these, I can hold these words here. All of them have to comply with the Bahamas AML framework, which is, no, the AML framework for the Bahamas, which are, and then I said each one of them, one of these has their own
PTC stand for again?
Private trust companies. So the central bank has their own AML guidelines, guidance on proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. And they have a guidance on, I think it's called financing of terrorism. I can't remember the name. What does the insurance have? What guides do they have for money laundering? Hmm? No, we're done with AML now. And somebody in insurance? Oh, put your head up. Let's go, insurance. What do you follow? Hmm? Yeah, but that's the, everybody follows POCO. We're done with individually the guidance that they give to their licensees.
The Insurance Act.
No, that's the legislation. No, we're talking about AML now. They have rules. Insurance, what do they follow? What do you mean you don't know?
I don't work in that area. I'm just learning that area now.
But you work in an insurance company,
Yeah,
so you should have done some AML training.
not yet.
Okay, moving on. Over here. Okay, insurance, who do they follow? Gaming, who do they follow? No, what AML rules do they follow? Homework. This gaming isn't here yet. Insurance is here. She's gonna find out for
Yeah, I'm gonna
us.
find out.
Okay, now, so our AML framework is all of this. Yes,
What was the last item, guidance on?
something on terrorism, or terrorist, some financing, I can't remember the name. All these to do with money laundering,
So that was FI.
financing.
Oh, financial.
The lottery is in gaming now?
No, not the legislation.
Okay.
You're only looking now at AML framework. You're on their website? Go on their website. All right, so we have this, we have this. These are all new. And the reason why we had to pass new legislation, why do we have to pass new legislation? Huh?
Because of the recommendation.
Because we had deficiencies. By the CFATF, which is a regional body of FATF. And the FATF is a significant why. I hearing something? Why is the FATF important? You read it last night? Because they are responsible for setting out the whole AML framework internationally. All of the recommendations that you should have read last week. So is that over here? Yes? Now, this is the local legislation, but we also have international organizations that also feed into our AML framework. And they provide us with statistics and guidances of what's happening around the world in different areas. So you have the IMF. The IMF first started out by doing what? What's the major role of the IMF? It's financial. Then they realized that money laundering had an impact on the finances of countries. So then they started doing AML assessments also. So in addition to the FATF, you have the IMF. because they do work also in money laundering. Next, you have Transparency International. What are they responsible for? Corruption and Bribery Index. Then you have the Egmont Group. What are they responsible for? All the FIUs around the world. They provide typologies of what they see. Then you have the recent impacts, which is, and what are they doing?
Money laundering and tax evasion.
Tax evasion is CRS. And then moving into 2020, they're gonna look at corruption. The banking industry here, they follow Basel, provides them as a regulator with guidances on account opening, KYC. That's where they get their guidance from. And because of our deficiencies, we had to do a national risk assessment. So we're able to identify what are the risks in the Bahamas. Now, when you speak about AML internationally, you'll see in I think it's Unit 2, they speak about all of the conventions. The Pomero Convention, all of those, you have to know what they are. Because those are the things that stem and influence what they do. So if you go to this website, you'll see them talk about arms smuggling, UNODC, United Nations. So each one of those conventions, they have committees that follow up on what their purpose was at the very beginning when they established it. So whenever you're in a compliance area, you not only have to know what's happening here or here, depends on which sector you're in, but you also have to know what changes here. You also have to know what's happening in each one of these. So we good now? She taking a photo. Write it down.
I wrote it down. But I didn't do the
Here,
drawing.
here's gaming.
Game I just got off 5:30.
What AML rules you follow?
Got off 5:30.
I know they're mentioned in the CDB AML guidelines. Do you have a separate document?
Say it again.
Do you have a separate AML document from the gaming board?
About the second one?
You follow the same one, Central Bank?
Yes.
Okay. Relax, relax. We just review. We're about to start. So I can take it off? Yes? So let's start Unit 3. Unit 3 answers, what's our question? E. So if you read Unit 3, the answer to each should have popped out at you. The only difficult thing you would have is to do your research to find your examples. Okay? All right, so, who read? But you volunteered already. You volunteered already. So we're going over the top. Let's go. And you.
Me? No, I was asking a question.
Come on. No, she's going up first.
Alright, good.
Come on, let's start. So chapter 3 gives us an overview of the AML framework in other jurisdictions. So when we look at our question, it says, all questions can be answered in relation to a jurisdiction with which you are familiar. So, anyone familiar with a jurisdiction other than the Bahamas? Say that correct. All right, so I thought we'll have some fun today because I know you all are avid readers. So let's start with you.
Exactly what would you like for me to?
I want you to give me an overview of the UK AML framework.
Gotta consult the text.
Why we're gonna go through it is because in this field, wherever your company does business, you have to be aware of their AML framework. And so it's not just knowing what the Bahamas does, but what other jurisdiction does. So that's why you see the questions are worded like this. What's the impact of this? What's the impact of that? What changes? And so all of those different organizations up there, when they bring out changes, new rules, or they provide typologies. Now, what the typologies are, those are case studies, things that happen. Whenever they bring those, you as a compliance officer have to look and see, are there things we need to change in our process? Do I see this happening here? Or, guess what? I've seen a transaction like this before. You didn't realize it was actually money laundering because you only was just one little square in that whole route. And so the typology teach you how you need to do things. Hold on one sec. So let's start with the UK.
So I'll be a scribe then, since we're talking about the UK.
You my scribe? No, you talking. Let's go.
I don't know where to start.
What do you mean? It's in the book. Where's your book?
That was like Monday when I read that.
That was Monday.
Yeah, I was focusing on our jurisdiction, like.
We
the
can get there.
overall,
We're gonna
you
get
know.
there. You have all of these in the back here. Let's go.
Okay, so they're gonna help me then.
Yes, they will. Come on, the UK.
Don't be shy.
Breakfast. I need is like pulling teeth with you all. Let's go.
So the overall, I guess the overarching principle was, in any jurisdiction, it's where you would know, suspect, or you would have any reasonable grounds to suspect, that anything is awry in terms of your AML and CFT.
What are the main
dealing with.
offenses under the UK legislation for money laundering?
What are the main offenses, guys? No?
Hello. She's waiting. All the readers, I had plenty of readers today.
Concealing.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That was what?
That guy
Of
missing.
the source, right? Concealing.
Acquisition of property that's.
I hear pages turning, page 62.
Entering into an arrangement.
What's that?
Of concealing acquisition of property, 62.
Sorry, I'm good. Transferring criminal properties and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Entering into or becoming concerned in an arrangement, knowing or suspecting that it facilitates the acquisition, retention,
Converting.
use of control of criminal property by or on behalf of another person, acquisition without adequate consideration, use or possession of criminal property.
Use or possession?
Punishment is 14 years.
Transfer, it's on the same line as concealing,
Besides,
disguising,
transferring.
or removing criminal property.
Okay, let me move over your way. Okay.
And then offenses are punishable by 14 years.
14 years, put 14 years on the side, just put a little curly thing.
Maximum of what, yeah?
A fine, or a fine, or both.
Does it say what the fine is?
No.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
Whatever, yeah.
Okay, oops, what you thinking? Okay, that's it, stop right there. Now, who's gonna do Jersey? You'll be doing the main offenses now, then we do the ancillary offenses. Wanna do Jersey? I see highlights. Love highlights. You need your red. What are the main offenses under Jersey law?
Big off, I think.
To, the UK, given that all,
Assisting another to retain the proceeds. Wait, five offenses, right?
Yes.
Yeah, assisting another to retain the proceeds of crime.
Everybody follows that, the chair's recommendation, but then there is design law, it's one that jurisdiction.
Assisting another to retain the proceeds of crime.
Because remember now, if you look at ours, you just changed it.
Yeah, yeah. But to me, it's very similar to
But that's the whole point of the exercise.
Acquisition, oh, this is one line, acquisition, possession, or use of proceeds of crime.
That's next slide. Oh, no, so that's not more.
Here. Tipping off.
Tipping off is ancillary offense, not a main offense.
Concealing or transferring the proceeds of crime. You know what? What you said this morning?
Ancillary.
And then, failing to disclose knowledge or suspicion of money laundering.
Knowledge of it?
Failing to
Or
disclose
suspicion
knowledge
of
or
money
suspicion of money laundering. That's
Next jurisdiction. Who read? Volunteer. Like pulling teeth. That's Jersey. Next one. Guernsey.
Offenses for Guernsey.
Mm-hmm. What's Guernsey on?
Guernsey starts on page
94.
90.
Concealing or transferring.
Transferring the proceeds of criminal conduct.
The next one.
Assisting another person to retain the proceeds of criminal conduct. Acquisition, possession, or use of proceeds of crime.
Is that us? That's not this. Let's look at Greece. Yes.
103.
Anyone looked it up? What's the money laundering framework for the EU? What's the framework when you speak about the EU? Yes, I heard it. Conventions? No, they're called directives. And what number are we on now? The number. We're on the 4th. So if you deal in the European market, you need to be familiar with the 4th EU directive. For every other jurisdiction, you need to know what are the offenses, the main offenses, and the ancillary offenses. For every jurisdiction where you operate. So now, let's see. Who came prepared for today? Oh, what's this blowing of wind? None of that. What are the main offenses? Is that help? Okay, I'll write while you speak. Hold on, she's gonna stop. Let's go. What are the main offenses? Mm-hmm.
What's the third one?
Arrangements.
Entering into arrangements. Arrangements.
Okay. So, what section is this in the act?
Part 3.
Section.
Concealing is in section 9.
Section
9 plus
9.
Arrangements is section 10.
Mm-hmm.
accusation.
Failure to disclose
12.
and tipping off.
14.
So what does concealing means? You can't do this course without knowing the legislation. Because they don't want you to lift it from the legislation, so they have it. They want you to understand it. So the whole purpose of going over what the UK legislation said and looking at the other ones is the book actually explains what they mean in their law. And you have to look to see whether or not the wording that we have in our law is similar to what they have there. So go to the book and see what the book says. What is the meaning of concealing in UK law? Found it? Page 62 at the bottom.
Concealing or disguising criminal property includes concealing or disguising its nature, source, location, disposition, movement, or ownership of any right which is sought to it.
Read it? You read what the UK said, right? Okay, so now read what POCA says. What is concealment under Bahamian legislation?
A person commits an offense of money laundering if acting with knowledge or reasonable suspicion if he conceals and deceives his property.
Disguises it, converts it, transfers it, removes it. And then it says in subsection 2, it says, for the purposes of this section, concealing or disguising criminal property includes concealing or disguising its nature, source, Locations are familiar. Disposition, movement, or ownership or any rights with respect to it. And concealing or disguising the proceeds of crime also includes the proceeds of any identified risk activity. So what is an identified risk activity? Don't quiet again. Hmm? So what are they? What are the identified risks? Where would they get the identified risk from? What assessment?
Oh, it's defined as assessment.
Yeah, but where would they get it from? The NRA. So what are the identified risks? Let's go read it out.
Corruption, cybercrime, human trafficking, money laundering or financing, or proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, terrorism or financing of terrorism, or such other risk as the minister may prescribe by regulations.
Okay, so our blacklisting this week said what? We have a deficiency, what's missing? What's missing, huh? No, this week. You heard it?
I bought the paper about 10.
Read the list again. What, how you come on the list? Oh, huh? No, read it again.
Corruption, cybercrime, human trafficking, money laundering, or financing of proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, terrorism or financing of terrorism, or such other risk as the minister may prescribe by regulations.
What missing?
Pause.
And they said we have a
Reporting.
deficiency in, showing that the authorities actually prosecuting like money laundering.
No, the laws dealt with that. The
Some
laws
of the
dealt with that.
reporting entities.
No. T. T.
Terrorism?
No. A. Yes. They want that. They want that day off. That's missing. That is missing from the list. Okay, so what's the difference between our definition of concealing versus the UK? If any. What's the difference? Because what you want to do when you write your answers, you don't want to just lift it from the legislation in your own words. You want to show the examiner that you know this legislation in comparison to another jurisdiction. You're not doing a compare and contrast, but the way in which you write it tells the examiner that I'm aware of other jurisdictions that may have a weaker framework than we do. That's what you're looking at. So either you're gonna use the UK, you can use Jersey, Guernsey, wherever you do business. If you only do business locally, you only do the Bahamas, then you stick to the Bahamas, and you can compare it to something that's in the textbook. But you're not lifting it section by section. You could say in the Bahamas, concealment means this, as compared to the UK, where the legislation simply just focuses on the first 4 items aforementioned. In the stronger framework, you see how you wording it? You let them know I understand what it is out there in a bigger G10, G20 country, but in our country, this is what we have. Because you have to sell it as if we have a strong framework. We have done everything that they said we should do. We are following the FATF recommendations. And that's what they're looking for. Do you really know what the legislation means? So what's the difference between the two? UK versus the Bahamas with concealment. The movement of ownership or any rights with respect. Is that there? Silence again.
With our
They have movement and ownership in the UK.
But our act is saying that in order for this offense to be committed, the person has to act with knowledge of reasonable suspicion.
Mm-hmm.
And for the UK, it just specifically goes into saying that the concealing is, I don't see that says that a person has that in order for it to be concealed.
The UK Act also
It
has.
does say, because it says the
Conscience or deliberate keeping back of material facts.
It's the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Someone else said something at the back?
And I was saying that's.
Which part?
Conscious withholding.
We word it differently. We word it different.
But what we was looking in section 8, what section 8 says? It says, no conviction for an event shall be necessary to prove that the property is directly or indirectly the proceeds of crime. Nor shall it be necessary to prove that a specific offense has been committed by any person. Knowledge, suspicion, intent, or purpose may be inferred from objective, factual circumstances. So isn't it a little bit stronger? Because it says knowledge, suspicion, intent, or purpose may be inferred from objective, factual circumstances. Let's go to arrangement. What is arrangements? Arrangements in the UK, and then what it says in the Bahamian legislation. What is arrangements under the UK law?
The concept of entering into an arrangement is a wide one and may be understood as being not unlike the legal concept of conspiracy. There must, in some sense, be a meeting of minds between two or more persons. In explaining the term, Diplock, LJ, observed, I gotta read all that.
Yeah.
All that is required to constitute an arrangement is that the parties to it shall have communicated with one another in some way, and that as a result of the communication, each has intentionally aroused in the other an expectation that he will act in a certain way. Where there is no requirement that an arrangement must be a commercial one, commercial arrangements and professional services are obviously included. The types of money laundering arrangements that could be entered into are only limited by the creativity of the launderers. Among those frequently used are the mixing of criminal proceeds with legitimate cash flows, the conversion of criminal proceeds from one currency to another, the movement of criminal proceeds from the jurisdiction to an offshore account, and the transfer of criminal fund proceeds into the names of nominees. This offense will therefore be the greatest relevance to financial institutions.
What did she just read to you?
Basically, two people or two entities have to have made a decision that they're going to do something. If that's all it's basically saying to me.
Yeah,
Two
okay.
people just have to have the intention of.
But she gave you something else when she read that case.
I heard something intention.
Yeah, something else too, to help you with answering your assignment.
Is it akin to conspiracy?
No.
It must be
She
a
gave you a
commercial.
gift.
Commercial.
What's the gift she gave you when she read that? Because I know you just glossed over that when you read. She gave you examples. That's what they're looking for. You need to look for examples just like those that happen here. What?
That's actually rough, yeah, because we don't prosecute these.
Why do you stop that? Yes,
I know the cases, we don't have them reported.
It's there. You have to look for it.
Hard.
Oh, Lord, there's always an excuse. What it says? It's even turning yellow. I just saved one just for you all.
See the heading? Those low ones, not the high profile.
Oh, expensive.
Yeah, but I mean, there are cases.
Yeah.
And we've had many. Have we not?
Yeah.
Only kept a
Then
couple?
that was recent.
Yeah, I said, yeah, but I'm just showing you that all of the papers go to the newspaper. You'll find out.
So you want me to examples on the new?
They want you to
Seven-day Adventist church.
Yeah, you got.
I mean,
It's in the papers.
7-day Adventist church.
Yeah, as long as it's in the paper. Because they can find it, you see?
Okay.
Yeah, they want examples for each one.
You mean you want actual fact, historical examples on why?
No, it won't be historical.
Class of examples.
You have defined examples that refer to this legislation now. The reason, there's been a lot. Whether or not the person was released or whatever, the point is that they want to see that you understand what the legislation means and that charges were brought under it. Then you can say what the conclusion is. Okay, acquisition. That's why I told you all to get started now. It's a lot, and you have a word count. So let's say at the end of the day, you found out for each one of those, you have 2 examples for each one of the offenses, but you over the word count.
One example.
Look for the ones where someone was actually convicted, and then remove the others. You see what I mean? But you have to put what you find now, so you have a good people. All right, so let's do acquisition. What does it say in the UK?
Because of the definition of criminal property, offense is only committed where a person knows or suspects that the property which is acquired, etc., represents his own or another's benefit from criminal conduct. It should be borne in mind that money laundering is itself criminal conduct. Thus, if an advisor is suspicious that a customer is engaged in money laundering activity, then since money laundering is itself an offense, the financial advisor deals with the customer's money at his or her peril, even having no idea as to the type of crime that originally gave rise to the proceeds. The defense of the acquisition or use or possession of the criminal property for adequate consideration is aimed at those such as tradespeople who are paid for ordinary consumable goods and services with money that comes from crime and are not under any obligation to question the source of the money. The adequacy of the consideration has to be judged according to the value of the property, whether the defendant acquires it, or the value of the use or possession, where he uses or possesses it. The provision by the person of goods or services that help another to carry out criminal conduct cannot be a consideration for these purposes. The effect of this defense is that those who supply ordinary goods and services are not under any obligation to question the source of the money used to pay for them. Nevertheless, the court's view on the working of the previous legislation was that it was for the defendant to raise the defense and show on the balance of probabilities that it applied. It was not necessary for the prosecution to disapprove of the defense, and the defendant had acquired, used or had possession of the proceeds for adequate consideration. It is important to note that where an institution accepts funds on account in anticipation of providing a service, and those funds are proved to be criminal property, it will not be able to claim that it had possession of the criminal property for adequate consideration.
So, what does it say at the beginning of legislation? It says the person who knows or suspects or ought to reasonably have known or suspected that he acquired or is acquiring the proceeds of crime, used or is using the proceeds of crime, or possess or possesses the proceeds of crime, commits an offense of money laundering. So it goes even further than what they is actually telling you, you ought to have reasonably have known. So even if you look at it, it says on the balance of probability, there on the front of it is just telling you, if it made no sense to you from the beginning, you should have known. And that's how it's worded through this whole legislation. It's not just what you know, it's what you ought to have reasonably known. And they say, for the purpose of this section, a person acquires property for inadequate consideration if the value of the consideration is significantly less than the value of the property. That means that you ought to have reasonably known. The person uses or has possession of property for inadequate consideration if the value of the consideration is significantly less than the value of the use or possession. Again, you should have known. The provision by a person of goods or services which he knows or suspect may help another to carry out criminal conduct is not consideration. Okay, now failure to disclose. What is that under UK law? Failure to disclose. Failure to disclose. Read it. What it says.
I'll start, and it says, an offense was committed in circumstances where a person failed to disclose knowledge or suspicion of drug or terrorist money laundering as a result of information that came to him or her in the course of his or her employment, professional trade. This is often called a direct mandatory reporting obligation.
So who falls under this section?
Employees in the regulated sector, nominated officers,
Failure to disclose.
MLROs,
Who else? Accountants, lawyers. So in the Bahamas, who supervises those people for AML purposes? Accountants, lawyers. Compliance Commission. So if you work in that sector, then you use, instead of what we had on the board earlier, you use Compliance Commission, AML guidelines.
Okay, so insurance is insurance commission. I said insurance will be the insurance commission.
Insurance Commission, well, you follow that? So failure to disclose, what does Bahamian legislation say?
statute shall apply to a person, firm, or sole practitioner engaged in one or more of the following activities: accountancy, audit or taxation advice or services, legal or notarial services, involving participation in financial or real property transactions. Person. What?
Yeah, go to section 2.
A person commits an offense if each of the following three conditions is satisfied. Namely, that he knows or suspects, or reasonably ought to have known or suspected, that another person is engaged in money laundering or committing an offense related to an identified risk.
You see how they capture it? So if you looking at the person who's coming in, the person has told you what they do is, in their profession, and they come in to purchase a home or piece of property worth $1 million, they're telling you ought to have reasonably known based upon the actual questions you have asked them, carrying out your due diligence, and the rest on you. And this is new because this was not in the legislation before.
that also speaks to the training you would receive on the job.
But very common sense. That's why they say what to us.
In chapter 3, it spoke to that in the UK that was, I forget the word, people were able to get away because of the lack of knowledge. Some part of section of Unit 3, I was reading that in the UK.
Okay, training is mandatory
Yeah.
by law.
Yeah.
Yes. Right? But I think in this environment that we are in, you ought to have known is reasonable. Recite out loud.
And okay, the UK says because of the role that they undertake and because they are deemed to be competent to undertake that role, the no training defense is not available to nominated officers or allowers inside or outside
Yeah.
the regulated sector.
So you cannot say at the end of the day you didn't know, because in certain positions you ought to have known. This is reasonable based upon the role you play. So if you're a teller, certain transaction that cross your desk, you ought to have known. Not necessarily because you didn't have AML training, because you should know based on the transaction that that's not a transaction that should have been conducted in that manner. So they always don't boil down to just as, I didn't have AML training. Because what you ought to have reasonably known in the position that you are in.
There are other procedures in the entity that you should follow in order for this to go into.
And it's embedded in it in order to prevent AML. Yes. So read this next subsection B.
Here, this is, it says here, POCA provides the defense for employers above. Yeah, POCA provides a defense for employees in the regulated sector that they did not know or suspect that another person was engaged in money laundering. And they had not been provided with AML-CFT training by their employer. This defense protects an employee where there are circumstances that give rise to reasonable grounds for suspecting money laundering, but the employee has not been trained to recognize such activity. It does not apply where actual knowledge or suspicion exists.
Exactly. So that's what we're saying now. It's twofold. If you know that she comes in every month and she deposits, say, $1,000, and you know based on your training and in the company's manual, it says that her deposits for the month should not exceed $2,000. If she comes in and starts depositing $5,000 this month, $6,000 this month, $7,000 this, you know it's a red flag without even AML training, because the system just tells you by what you do that she cannot exceed that limit. If she exceeds that limit, there's certain questions that you ask her, and it's all in the manual. So even though you may not say it's money laundering, you know she's outside her parameters. And that means go to supervisor. Oh, this person always deposits so-and-so, but she's doing this. And that's why you always hear them say, I'm running to my supervisor. Well, let me ask my supervisor. Because there's something that's outside the parameters. They're not sure it's money laundering. But they said, you're outside, and according to the rules, this is the next step. Then the supervisor says, okay, this looks like this is unusual. Didn't say money laundering now. They just say unusual. And then the unusual transaction goes to compliance to determine, is it money laundering?
That's when you fill out your STR.
That's there. Then if the MLRO says yes, it is money laundering, then they complete the SDR. If it isn't, then it's just file away with a notation, this was not money laundering, this was a usual transaction.
At which point you need to, I guess, I don't know what you call it, but say for instance, the lady comes in and we notice over the last 2 months, the deposit has been increasing, right? What role would the supervisor now play as a lack of compliance person in questioning the final designation of business change? To
Did you change jobs?
Yeah.
Yes, all that stuff, yeah.
And then can we ask them now for substantive documents?
That's what they, yes, that's what they go to supervisor for.
So now that's on your file, and then in is done to the kind of flag is the
That's
same.
right.
It's now a new,
Yeah.
range of
Yes.
qualities.
Then it changes. So that's why when they ask questions, a lot of people get defensive.
Yeah.
But if you're, when you open the account, you said you were only going to bring in 500. Now you have a job, you're bringing in more. It's gonna be red flagged.
Yeah.
And if you refuse to answer, then they're gonna file it.
I don't know, like some commercial banks, when you first open your account, like
I
you
was
say,
just
they'll
gonna
tell
say
you,
that.
okay, do you expect this account to go over X amount at any period of time? And so you would say no, and so they'll flag you, they'll put like a risk in the system, they will like put certain parameters in
Yeah,
place.
based
And so-
upon your answers.
And so they would normally advise customers, they would say, okay, if you have any sort of change, maybe you got a new job, whatever it is, come in and advise us, and let us know, or just call and say something and then bring something so you can
But
update the
even,
system, but not
but even with
Yeah.
that, but even with
alerts.
that, yeah, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, and even with that, just like casino dealers, you can't determine how much tip they make. The bank only, let's say, only allows us to deposit 5,000-6,000 per month, but I can make 5 one week, make 3 the next week. So when I try and deposit $8,000, now I have to bring in certain aspects of it, my paycheck, my
Yeah.
account, all of that, just deposit. And even some banks don't take it. You have to open up accounts to other banks just to try and have somewhere to put your money because it's coming in too frequently.
Yeah. And that's because
So,
the person who is the MLRO doesn't understand the business.
Say it, normally we look at
Because
all of that.
if you're a gambler,
Yeah.
I can go today, win nothing. I can go tomorrow, win nothing. I can go next month and win $500,000. I can go for 6 months, win nothing. And then I can win 2 million. It depends on the game you're playing and the stakes. And so they have to understand the client.
And industry.
You see? And so if you're getting tips, they need to know which section you work in, how many hours you work. They should know which casino you're working at. Whether you work in double shift, triple, it has to make sense based on the nature of the business.
She doesn't have to conceal it over various accounts.
No, you wouldn't have to if they understand the nature of your business. You see? You have to understand the nature of the business. It's the same way, if she was selling real estate, she may sell a little small house over the hill, and her commission is 5,000. Then, depends on that person who saw her saying she was good, mentioned someone else, she get another deal, she could sell a $1 million house, she get a bigger commission. But all along, she was just getting a little 2,000-3,000, now she has a big one. But you have to understand the nature of the business, all you do is ask her, well, what changed? And then she would say, well, you know, someone referred me and I was able to sell property so and down the road, we have the documentation, that's it. But her parameters won't change, because that was a one-off deal.
Yeah.
But if she's at a steady job, she said I moved from desk A to desk B.
Yeah.
My clientele is now these clientele, so my commission will automatically go up. When I get the first one, I'll have an idea what the range is, then they will change it. See, because a one-off is different from a steady change. And that's another thing you have to understand. You understand the nature of the business. You have to know how the business changes, and you have to know your client. When your client refuses to answer questions, then there's something wrong. So sometimes you see people at the teller wicket or on the opposite side, they're taking long, don't get annoyed. Because sometimes they're asking questions. Because you come up now, they're saying things in the system and they want to ask questions. Sometimes the system flags it, and because everybody's using the ATM machine, they hardly see them. So now you're here in person, they can ask you all the questions that are in the system.
Because where I used to work in money transfers, you know, we used to have certain clients that would come in to send transactions, $2,000 every other day. And then when you have to do your due diligence and ask where the source of funds are from, I'm a college student in so-and-so country, and I'm here on vacation. You're here on vacation.
You don't go on vacation to send money.
Exactly.
But you see what I'm saying? You have to know. And that's why I'm encouraging you to read the typology. When you go on all of these websites, they have typologies. And you will see the way people launder money. Everything is not huge. Some are small. But if you have multiple persons doing the same thing, sending money to the same person, you'd never know.
Sometimes if you have more than one location, they would.
They go to each one?
Yeah, one
So
would be,
you'll have,
one
you'll
would
have,
be
you'll
here and the
have
next one.
all
would
of
be
you
there.
making the deposit to the
Different
same account
places.
today
Yeah.
in various branches, all in the same bank.
Shouldn't that still fly?
It flies, because the money's already gone.
Yeah.
You see? Because that's how quick it is. It's gone. Because guess what? As she deposit hers, let's say all of them deposit theirs around the same time. All of them send a message, done. Then I sit to my computer, I transfer it, it's gone. Then you do yours after lunch, when each one of yours is done, it's gone. I mean, you can still file, but now you have to follow the money where it went. Because where I transferred to the next person could have transferred out to 6 people.
Yeah.
Because with internet banking, you have all the parties there. I send it out to whoever needs to go to, it's gone.
Yeah.
Okay, read subsection 3. Info cop.
The required disclosure referred to in subsection 2 is a disclosure of the information or other matter to an officer of a body, office, or department authorized to receive the disclosure for the purpose of this part, hereinafter referred to as focal point officer, in the form and manner, if any, prescribed for the purposes of this subsection by the focal point officer. 4. Person does not commit an offense under this section if he has a reasonable excuse for not disclosing the information or other matter. He does not reasonably know or suspect that another person is engaged in money laundering or an identified risk activity. And 5.5. A disclosure to a focal point officer is a disclosure which A, is made to a person nominated by the alleged offender's employer to receive disclosures under this section, hereinafter referred to as the nominated officer, and B, is made in the course of the alleged offender's employment and in accordance with the procedure established by the employer for that purpose.
Okay, so what's the penalty if you commit an offense under sections 9 through 11? Which are the main offenses? What's the penalty?
Summary.
500,000 also.
Go ahead.
On summary convictions, imprisonment for a term not exceeding 7 years, or to a fine not exceeding $500,000 or the both.
Okay, so stop right there. What did UK say their fine is? It was on the board. 14 years.
14.
So we thought this was steep with this scheme out. You see the difference? So is it strong enough?
Did the UK Act specify on summary conviction? Because
No.
that's only a summary conviction, so that implies that there might be a conviction on the indictable section as well.
Yeah, conviction on indictment and prison for a term not exceeding 20 years. Or to a fine or both. And remember, their fine was actually left open. So 12 is failure to disclose. 13, section 13, failure to disclose by nominated officers. Again, it says a nominated officer knows or suspects, or he has reasonable grounds for knowing or suspecting that another person is engaged in money laundering or an identified risk activity. So most of you are now in this course to become compliance officers and MLROs. You see what the law says? Know, suspect, or has reasonable grounds for knowing or suspecting. So I mean, you can't just base it on, if you're in a commercial bank, even if you're in a commercial bank, you just can't base it on what happens in the Bahamas. Because money laundering, it moves, the steps. So if someone is in the fishing industry, what other legislation you think you need to know? Right here, someone in the fishing industry, what do you need to know for money laundering?
Fisheries Act. What you mean in terms of like season? So you tell me you're a pro
One,
fisherman.
you have to know seasons, what else?
Value or,
Whatever fish, that's the kind of fish they catch, when they go out. Size of the boat.
the expense related to running the boat.
Expense, we have to know the industry now.
If you come to me in July, tell me it's when you're crawfish oil.
Right.
The season
So-
is open to do.
If they're in the fishing industry, I'm drawing my boat now, don't laugh. Yes, get that up there. I have some water. And I have a son. All right, so what you need to do with the fishing industry? The size of the boat. How much you can hold. Price. Quantity. Frequency. I heard something. Why you want to know the speed?
How long did it take me to get to the middle
Huh?
of the ocean?
How much,
Because we shouldn't be catching.
how much you gonna get her at each time? How much you turning in? She knows she could pay 50.
What else you need to know?
Cost affiliated with running the boat.
Okay.
Picking stuff on the water, people too fast.
What else you need to know? I heard somebody say something.
What about,
I heard it.
You can't be on the boat fast.
Okay, so
would you need to
The-
know like the law, like where
You need,
you're traveling? The
maybe
part
just
of the world
surrounding.
high risk areas, I don't know.
yeah, you want to know there.
Better nobody, nobody's saying that.
Huh?
Nobody's saying that.
Well, however number it is. So from an AML perspective, what do you think you need to know as an MLRO? I heard it already. You need to know about human smuggling. Arms, weapons, drugs. So what do you think you need to know about human smuggling? As an MLRO compliance officer.
Hotspots, the routes, the trade.
The routes, the trade, how it happens. Now you're not looking exactly at how the bodies move. You're looking at when they get paid. That's the aspect you're looking at it from. Whether or not any of these jurisdictions here or here are known for any one of those. Arms. When you say arms, you know what we're talking about, right? No. Weapons is weapons. Arms, guns.
Same concept.
Yeah, same concept. Once you know this, and you know the seasons, and you know the size of the boat, that's why it's always good to do what they call in banking sight. So you be able to walk down in the hull, see the size of it, know how many containers it holds, and then you have an average. If each container holds this amount of lobster, selling at this price, this is what I expect. After, just like he said, these are the costs. After you take good and then you know. So on average, when he comes to you and says, this is what I make, you know. And you need to look at each client and whatever business they're in. You have to know the business. Then you have to know who they're selling it to. Because you would hate to say he's fishing in lobster and he's selling it to someone and in a jurisdiction where you've never seen lobster. Or they don't eat it. Or they get it from up north, the green ones. You've been there before, you've never seen an orange lobster, so who is he selling it to? Or are they selling it on to someone else?
Most of that information, as the MLRO, you depend mainly on the client relationship, or come from your client relationship officers to provide you that. You do your law and your country
But
cross-border research.
But some now, you have to make sure you have some initial knowledge, because she could be in business with him.
True. So
So you don't know if she's telling you the truth or not, so you must have some knowledge. I always say, never ask a question you don't have the answer to yourself. You should have already done your homework. So when she comes with something, or he comes, and you say, but that number doesn't sound right. On average, this is the amount that is actually sold from the Bahamas to this jurisdiction. This is what the report we made last year. So how come you could have actually made income more than what the country has reported? Something's not right. You see what I mean? You have to have the answers before you ask the questions. All right, so tipping off, section 14. It says, knows or suspects that any disclosure under this part has been made or an action has been taken by the FIU, and they make a disclosure to another person which is likely to prejudice any investigation which might be conducted following the disclosure. You would find when you do training, a lot of employees, even though you say it, they still do it. They still disclose. Because they don't see it as being tipping off. I'm just telling, not tipping.
And don't let them have
That's how they
if they
differentiate
have a
between the two. They say,
relationship.
if I'm just telling her, we work together, and I say, you know that unusual transaction I told you about, they go in the file it. You see what I mean? So it's tipping off. Yeah.
You saying like as if you're talking to a customer coworker.
No, co-worker, you can't do it. When you send it, that's it. Even if I call you back and ask you more questions, there's more for you to go to tell her.
Yeah, there's some different provisions in the UK law that I read.
Go ahead, tell me what the UK says.
The UK provided some allowances that you could, it wasn't considered tipping off if you were discussing it with someone in your same institution, if I remember correctly. And or it's something to do with receiving or someone else of a similar institution that has that follows or is regulated by the same AML framework, something to that effect.
No, we'll go outside the institution.
I may be thinking of something.
And remember now, you always look at your environment and you know your people. You see, that's the difference. Yes. We're too small.
Yeah. I don't think it was for tipping off. It was just for preventing money laundering. That if you had certain information.
No, that's different. Yeah, that's
you
different.
could
If
share
I know
right,
today I saw
right.
this and this looks very strange, then when they do their little huddle in the morning or once a week, you say, this was my experience.
And
That's it.
It wasn't tipping off. It had to do with privacy or
Confidentiality.
Confidentiality.
Yes.
That you could discuss to an extent with another institution that is also regulated by the same body. It was something to that effect.
No, we don't do that.
Something like that, I read.
Yeah, that's them, not us.
Yeah, but that it allowed for that you wouldn't be, because you would be basically helping to prevent money laundering. Something to that effect. Very, very basic.
I mean, there's section 333B.
Yeah.
Possible, yeah. It's 2 or 3 errors.
I see it here, you see here where the person that was not in offense, the information to the court, so we know stuff. Organization, type of firm, UK one. Okay, the number of sections.
But this place is too small for that. This is too small. We will not do that.
Yeah.
No. Because I don't know who she knows. I don't know who she's related to. No.
But that, I was mixing it up. It wasn't
They won't
tipping.
work. Huh?
I was mixing it up. It wasn't
Yeah, but
tipping.
that's a big place. We don't do that. No.
Exactly, everybody's somebody does that.
So what's the fine for that now? If you tip off? How many years? 2? No, ain't no 2. 2 in UK? No, how much is it in the Bahamas? 12.
Yeah.
12. Yes, what? Yes, it's twelve.
Something like 500,000.
Because they said we didn't have no convictions, we have to send some people to jail. Someone has to be the scapegoat.
That's why the newspaper was on this week.
Yes. And again, the fine is $500,000. So you gave two? Yes. What did I say in the last class? What did I say in the last class? What are we trying to prove? We're not G10, we're not G20.
Yeah.
We're a very small offshore bank standing alone. What did you see on the new blacklist this week? Countries, US territories, and us? Yep.
But the US came up though, and they tried to close their territories.
Of course they did.
Yeah, but they still have
They still left us out there,
Yeah, they still have the code.
even though they're down the road.
Transit, agreement.
Oh, Lord, you're going back to that. But see, the way money laundering works, even though you are a transit, you're still gonna be caught there.
And it's that concept that you're thinking is just the transit is why we get used.
Yes.
Because we are small and less experienced and less regulated.
And we have no one out there speaking for us except ourselves.
It's the big guys.
Yeah, but it's transit, you're passing it through. And whatever falls off, you get it. Yeah, we benefit from it. You benefit from it. You are. You're not big enough.
I know.
You can't fight them. You can't fight them.
We could erase our mindset, we could enter into this field.
Yeah, you
never
have
fight
to.
them.
It's just the reality of it.
We know the reality, but then
Yeah.
you also have to subconsciously be aware of your thought process, because then that can affect your judgment in the future.
It won't, trust me.
Okay.
It's just like, for instance, the black-white situation, right? The race stars. I know what it is for me. This is not I can't get into certain places because of this. That's fine. That's what it is. But so what it does, it makes you know how to work your way around situations and play the game.
It's, you understand? That's why you basically just proved my point, that your thought process is gonna contaminate your position.
Trust me, it won't. You just gotta learn how to work within the framework, legally, okay, to get what you need.
Okay.
Now, when the laws change, then you change. But that's how everybody operates. The big companies operate the same way. They do until they have to change when the laws change, so they change and they evolve also. So, learn from them.
All right, so what's consent in the UK? In the UK, what's consent? Then someone could tell me what it is in the bottom. What does it mean? When you get consent.
You're referring to the consent relative to, from the agencies that whether or not you can accept a transaction. Yes. So in respect of that, they refer to, if you suspect that there is a chance of money laundering, you can notify them and see whether or not they will consent you to proceed with the transaction.
Yes.
And they have, what, 7 days to respond?
7 days.
They don't respond.
And they normally do it right then.
They can proceed.
Yeah, they normally do it right on the phone. They normally tell you what to do. No, we don't have to wait 7 days.
In our jurisdiction, would that be the case?
No, they do that, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
When you call them on the phone,
Uh-huh.
they tell you right then what to do. Once you explain it to them precisely and succinctly, they know exactly what to do. Now, if you're long-winded person, you're going around and around the bush, you're gonna confuse the people, because then they're gonna say, we'll call you back. But if you tell them exactly what it is, they'll tell you exactly what to do. Believe it or not.
You're talking about the FIU,
Mhm.
for example?
And they will liaise with the police while they have you on the phone and the client is downstairs. One funny. They're that quick. If you can relay what the actual issue is succinctly to them, they know what to do.
Does that ever result in them actually hearing consent?
Yes?
And like,
Consent.
Yes, sir.
On the powers and all.
And very quickly.
But you just have a. Hold on.
Don't believe it is. I've seen it happen several times. They know what to do. Because when you call, you have to alert them that there is a suspicion. An actual suspicion, not a guess. I know.
Well, that's my concern, if it's a new suspicion. For having them to come immediately when there is only a suspicion.
No, you have to know. So this must have been a client that you have been observing. You've seen the breaches. You've asked questions, you're not getting the answers to it, and you suspect flight. The person's gonna leave the country. You call them, and they will have an officer at the airport and an officer outside the institution. Yes, because they don't normally travel alone.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I may miss something. You got to that point by saying, how did you get to that point that?
You're monitoring a client activities, you're watching what they do.
Yeah, but the decision's not on me as the regulated entity, doing business with this client. It's
Why?
No, I mean, I'm giving information to the FIU, saying this is a suspicion, but there's further investigation, they have to do.
But I've already done my investigation, and I have a
Me as
feeling
the
that
banker?
flight. Yes, and I have the suspicion that there's gonna be a flight risk.
Okay.
So you call the FIU,
Okay.
and they know what to do.
No, I'm sorry, it sounded like the bank is giving instruction.
No,
Okay.
we're telling you the situation, we've done our research. There is some anomalies here, they don't add up, we're not getting adequate answers, and it appears to be a flight risk. That ain't different at all.
Just alert, that's all.
They make that decision.
In the loose term,
And then they will turn around and ask you for all of the regular requests for the documentation.
Yeah, in most cases, they would
so
have
what
already
happens if it doesn't turn
informed the
out?
FIU of the situation.
Not all the time.
So what happens if it's not the case?
What do you mean?
Like, it doesn't match up, there's an already person.
But I'm saying to go to that extent,
have
you
to
know.
have your ducks in a row.
Yeah, you know.
But you still never know, that's the point, you still never know. Like, this was a very interesting point in this chapter where, they gave the example in UK where HSBC, I believe it was, being sued after the fact because of the extension of the moratorium period, et cetera, where they delayed the transaction, and in the end, the client sued.
Yeah.
And so, but HSBC was still vindicated in the sense that they still did their job. The client was upset, and in the end, the client was not money launderer or whatever it was from what I remember reading. But still, they were protected under the law. But so
Because
I
it's a
say that
risk.
to answer her question, like, you know, if it turns out to be nothing, you still do your due diligence.
Right.
Because it still looks suspicious to you, you know, and you're
And what if
following
it turns
the
out that it
proper
was and you
procedures.
did nothing?
Right,
You get
Yeah.
and even that, even that has to be very precise as to what your suspicion is. Based on reading the HSBC case, they fully analyzed, what were the, decision-making aspects of that bank. And some of it was challenged, you know. So just, you know, really can't be willy-nilly.
No, it's not really me.
Cause,
And that's why I'm trying to have you train your mind in writing these answers. You have to be precise. Don't go all over the place. Because that's how this feel is. You have to know what you're talking about. No guess, no feelings. It is what it is. You're looking at numbers. Numbers have to match up to what it is you say that you're doing. And if it doesn't match up, then you have to provide the documentation. And the documentation has to make sense. It may be illegitimate at the end, you know, but the point is that it made sense at the point in time in which you reviewed the documents. It all added up. Because sometimes it's very difficult to find out if an invoice is fake.
yeah, I was just
Very
finding
difficult.
that.
In this day in technology, how we do everything electronically, you can't tell.
I
Anybody can take a logo from anywhere and paste it on something and give it to you. But as a banker, we don't go to the extent of say, oh, well, let me call IBM. Did you issue an invoice to so-and-so? No, we don't do
Be taken
that.
off as well.
You
You see what I'm
asked
saying?
that
Right.
client,
So you got to
my client
satisfy
wanna get that million
yourself.
out, I need an invoice for the million. No problem, I send it to you right now.
Exactly.
And that suffices, that's your
And that's what makes the
documentation.
job more complicated now, because when the invoice comes from whomever, you have to check the name of that person,
Yeah,
that company. Are they legitimate? Are they in the business what they say they were licensed to do?
Because basically you run your business through a fact too.
Yeah. So it's a lot of checking. Going around and around and around. And then you have to keep your mind open to whether or not you hear any of those vendors' names in the news and the jurisdictions in which they operate. That's just how serious money laundering is. So I heard you mention confidentiality. What's our laws with regard to confidentiality? We're wrapping up now. What's our laws with regard to confidentiality?
Those hold unless we have court instructions or instructions from any, like DFIU or so on, to provide information.
That's
Those
just
are the
one,
only
that's
things
one
that
section.
override.
That's one section. What our law says, who knows? For confidentiality.
Everybody quiet.
I think she identified the basic common law position.
We have the common law position, right? In the case of Turnier, it's in your notes. And we also have it in statute. Section 19 of the Banks and Trust Companies Regulations Act speaks to confidentiality. So everyone now should be able to answer E. Yes? Start now, because you need to find examples.
Ms. Archer,
Yes.
CFRA, what's that again?
Banks and Trust Companies Regulations Act, Section 19. So I'll see you next week, Saturday. Read chapter 4.